Hello students, my name is Dr. Jyoti Prakash and I am assistant professor in the Department of Management, School of Management Sciences, Lucknow. Now welcome you all to the video lecture that is based on the topic employee health, and it is very important being a human resource manager or being an organization that you just take care of the health of your available workforce. So just have a look or have a discussion on this particular important issue related to your employees or related to the employees of the organization. So firstly, what is employee health means? What do you understand by employee health? Health is basically the state of well-being. It not only includes physical well-being, but also mental and emotional well-being. It is the responsibility of every employer to provide or to a healthy work environment to his or her employee, or they just take care, means employee just take care the health aspect of their employees too, so that they just they do not come into the state of illness and a particular sort of disease, and they just continue their productivity and they just continue their efforts in the attainment of the goal or attainment of the objective of the organization. So, it is all about the concept of health. So, the next question come into the discussion that what is the need of taking care of employee health. So, obviously, the need is like it improves, means if an employer, if you are taking care of the health of your employees, so by doing so you are trying to improve the productivity of employees and the quality of their work, means they will not take leave, and they will obviously give their extra effort or their 200% productivity in the fulfillment of the goal or fulfillment of the given target to them. In fact, healthy employees are more productivity and give quality performance. Because healthy person is who basically healthy person is basically fit with the health and the mind too. So, that person is obviously behave like sound, and they will give they will just do the quality of work, and they will give more productivity and more efforts in the organization or for fulfillment of any task or any duty. The next one is, if you are taking care of the health of your employees, by doing so you are protecting your workers or your employees against any health hazard arising out of work condition, means if they while working in the organization, if they are get infected or they are get affected by the working condition, the employer has to take care this particular fact too. The employer has to preserve physical and mental health of the employees, means they have to take care of the working condition and the environmental or climatic condition of the organization, so that they just be safe in the organization and they do not face or they do not be a part of a disease and or physical unfitness. So, if you are taking care of the health, so by doing so you are trying to preserve the physical and mental aspect or mental health of your employees. And if you are taking care of the health, means if you are taking care of the well-being, you are taking care of the fitness of your employees. So, by doing so you are trying to reduce the absenteeism level of your employees, you are reducing the ratio of the turnover and the injuries and the accidents that may arise while working or while performing in the organization. And if the employees are having a picture about the employer or about the organization that they are being and their health are being prioritized and being focused by the employer. So, obviously, by doing so the organization is trying to improve or trying to inculcate a sense of confidence and trying to boost up the morale of the employees working in the organization. So, these are basically some of the factors which somehow gives a sense or gives an idea to the employer that they just they need to focus on the employee health. The next one is what are the provisions, statutory provisions for safety in India. So, the Factories Act contains specific provisions for the safety of workers, and so that they just by adopting these type of provisions into the organization, the employees are just taking care of the health aspect of their employees. So, these provisions are like cleanliness, disposable of wastage and effluents. The next one is ventilation and temperature, the next one is dust and fumes, the next one is overcrowding, lighting, drinking water, latrines and urinals and spit-ins. So, these are basically the sections, different sections come under Factories Act 1948, and because it has been regulated by government. So, every employer or every organization is bound to adopt these provisions into the organization, so that by adopting they can ensure about the health and safety of their workers in the organization. So, what are these provisions? Just have a discussion on the available provisions under the Act. So, the first provision is what the section 11 of the Factories Act 1948 that describes that this section basically specifies the issues of cleanliness at the workplace. It is mentioned that in the provisions that every factory shall be kept clean and free from effluent arising from any drain, prairie and other nuisance. These include that there should be no accumulation of dirt, refuse or should be removed daily, and the entire area should be kept clean. Means in totality this section basically gives a picture or gives an idea to the employer that they have to take care of the cleanliness aspect into the organization. Means the floors and the rooms and the available things or available machineries or available every infrastructure fixtures and machineries must be kept clean or must be removed from the dirts and the fumes. So, it is all about section 11 is all about related to the cleanliness element into the organization. So, the next 12 is all about disposable of wastage. The section 12 describes that there should be a proper disposable of wastage and effluents. Means that every factory should make effective arrangements for the treatment of, means for a proper disposable of wastage and effluents due to basically arises from the manufacturing activity carried out in the factories, and in order to take care of the health and safety to the employees or the workers, this particular aspect or this particular thing or provision should or must be adopted by the employer. Means the section 12 is all about focused on there should be a proper disposable of the wastage from the organization, so that it should not create any type of gases or it should not be created, it should not create any type of negative thing that will cause the bad health of the employees. The next one is section 13. This section focuses on ventilation and temperature maintenance at workplace. Means whatever the workplace or the factory you have determined for conducting the manufacturing activity, that factory must have a proper ventilated system, so that the worker should not feel suffocative or suffocation in performing the activity in the work in the factory or in the workplace. So, there should be a proper ventilation and the temperature should also be tolerable. In fact, means the temperature or the temperature basically should be adequate enough, so that the employee or the worker should not feel hot or should not feel we can say that should not feel suffocative or should not feel down, so that they just do not and obviously they will feel like down and they will feel like suffocative. Obviously, they will not give their effort 100% productivity in the completion of that particular task. So, every factory or every organization should focus on this particular aspect, that factory or that office must be or should be properly ventilated and should have a adequate temperature, must be tolerated by your workers or your employees of the organization. So, this particular section focus on this particular aspect. The next section deals on the proper exertion of dust and fume in the factory. In this there is it is mentioned that factory which deals on manufacturing process should take care of the proper exertion of dust, fumes and other impurities from its origin point. The next section 15 explains that basically focuses on artificial humidification in the factories. Means in this the humidity level of air in the factories are artificially increased as per the provision prescribed by the state government. Means it is basically related to this particular section is related to the field of like to the factory or to the company like cotton or the fabric. Means in that sector or in those factory there should be proper humidity, so that the manufacturing activity should be conducted in a very easy manner or should be conducted in a very smoother manner. So, this particular sector section basically describes the proper maintenance of a humidity level into the factory or into the organization. The next section basically explains or describes the issue like overcrowding. Overcrowding is also an important issue which is specified in this section. In this section it is mentioned that no room in the factory shall be overcrowded to an extent that can be injurious to health of workers employed and herein. Means there should be a proper placement, there should be a proper we can say that an arrangement of availability of the workforce, so that they just feel free and they just have space to move around, to breathe basically properly. If a particular, suppose if a room capacity is suppose 2 or 5 and in that particular room there are 50 people, there if 50 people are included or just we can say that if the capacity exceeded that obviously every member or every person of that particular room or that factory will feel suffocative. So, there should be also a proper treatment of this particular overcrowding, that there should be a proper allocation of space to the available workers or available employee in the organization, so that they just feel free or they just feel they just breathe in a very we can say that in a healthy way, and they just be safe or be healthy while working in the organization. The next one is obviously the next section that describes section 18. This section basically specifies regarding arrangement for sufficient and pure drinking water for the worker. There are also some specified provisions for suitable point for drinking water supply, as in that drinking water point should not be within 6 meter range of any washing place, and urinal latrines, pittance, open drainage carrying influence. In addition to this, a factory where there are more than 250 workers, provisions for cooling drinking water for hot temperature should be made. Means somehow this particular section is all about arrangement of a water facility into the workplace. Means this particular act means obviously there are certain provisions, means whatever the provisions available we are discussing right now. Section 18 is all about making a provision of drinking water into the organization. Means there must be some arrangement for making available this making available water to the employees or to the worker working in the organization, and there must be, if the employer is if the organization is big, means if that employee if that organization is having more than 250 workers, so there may be more suitable or mere point of water supply, so that every employee or every worker should not be accumulated on one particular place. They just spread it out, they just scatter, or they just available at different places of water supply. Because there is a issue of overcrowding. So, that should also be taken care of by the organization too under this particular act, that there should not be overcrowding at any place of the organization. So, if the organization is big and having more than 250 workers, so there should not be one place where water can be made available. So, there should be some arrangement done by the organization that there may be many point of drinking water, so that different people belong to different department or different places, they just go to their nearest sources of supply of water, and they just do not be a part of overcrowding. And this drinking water point should not be within 6-meter range of any washing place, means the drinking place or the source of water supply should be available near to the places of like urinal, latrine, spitins and open drainage, so that a proper we can say that a proper drainage can be ensured by the employer. That a proper draining means these things are properly draining out from the organization without harming the health of the available workforce or the employees. And there is also a provision that must be followed by the employer, that if the employer is having more than 250 workers, so there should be availability of cooling drinking water, or we can say that water cooler should be available to those organizations who are having which is having more than 250 workers. In case of hot temperature, that cooling or drinking water can be just quench the thirst of the worker, and they just maintain their energy, and they just regain their energy, lose energy, and they just re-energize themselves, means workers re-energize themselves, and they just give their effort and product efforts in the attainment and the goal of the organization. So, this section is all about concerned about making provisions for making provisions for drinking water in the organization. The next section is section 19. So, this section basically provides detail relating to urinal and latrine construction or at factories. It mentioned that every factory there should be sufficient accumulation of for urinals, which should be provided at convenient situated places, and it should be kept clean and maintained. There is a provision to provide separate urinals for male and female workers. Obviously, we all are human, and we are having some natural calls like urinal and latrine. So, while working, because we as worker spend most of our time in our organization, in our factories. So, there should be a proper arrangement for these type of natural calls or related to the employees or the health of the employees. So, this section is basically all about arrangement or availability of urinals and latrines in the factories or in the organization, so that they just you are just taking care, by doing so you are just taking care of the health, that they are going properly into that surrounded and they are just fulfilling their requirement, and these should be available at convenient places. So, every worker just go to the convenient and their suitable places and just fulfill the requirement that they are having. And there is also under this provision, there is also a provision to provide separate urinals for male and female workers, because in the organization too nowadays we are very much able to see that in the available workforce, if there is a ratio of male, so there is also a ratio of female too, means female and male are working in the organization. So, there must be a provision for separate washrooms or separate bathroom for these two genders available in the workforce. Means you have to make separate arrangement for male as well as female workers too. The last section of the Factories Act, which is somehow related to the health of to the employee health, that is section 20, and section 20 is all about arrangement a proper provision of spittance in the factory. It is mentioned that in every factory there should be a sufficient number of spittance situated at convenient places that should be properly maintained and cleaned and kept in hygienic condition. Means in the earlier section it is also required, means if washrooms and loos are available in organization and in factories, time to time those are maintained and cleaned by some appointed cleaners on a regular basis. So, by doing so you are also taking care of the health and hygiene of your employees, that they are just having a clean, they are just working in a clean or a hygienic workplace, and they are not, they will not get infected from any type of unhygienic thing or any type of basically we can say that disease. Last section is all about proper focuses on proper arrangement of spittance in the factory. Means while doing or while working there may be some garbages and there may be some wasteless thing arises while working in the organization. Means if we are writing and we have to basically plan out certain activities. So, obviously planning is not so easy. In order to get an idea, we just go through certain some of the stages and we just go through various steps and various thinking. So, we just write down on papers and we just store, we just throw that paper into somewhere. So, in order to get rid of all these wastages, there should be a proper arrangement of what spittance in at convenient places, so that by doing so you can ensure that you are just taking care of the cleanliness and you are just taking care of the hygiene hygiene factor into your organization, and employees are also having a picture, or employees are also knowing that the organization is very neat and clean. And if we go or we work in that type of organization, we will not get infected from certain diseases, and our health and our safety must be taken care of by the employee too. So, these are basically some of the provisions which are related to the safety, health and safety measures introduced in the factory or in the organization. Just have a look one by one. Means statutory provisions for safety in India. So, these are basically the provisions that must be, means this is basically the provisions of a particular act. That act is Factories Act 1948. So, these provisions must be followed by the employer or must be followed by the organization in order to take care of the health and safety measures of their employees. And in India it must be followed by every employer if they are having less number or more than 250 workers in the organization. Means obviously these are basically the hygienic thing or the hygienic thing that must be ensure that if you have introduced these factors into your organization, you are taking care of the health of your employees. So, these are basically the section. The next one is measures to promote employee health. So, time to time you have to adopt these measures in order to ensure the health of your employees. The first one is create a flexible working environment. Means if someone is not feeling well, so you just give an opportunity to work from home, and you just introduce or you just provide them a flexi hours, so that they just take care of their health too, and they also give their productivity in the attainment of the task, the target or the task that they have been assigned by the organization. If you being an employer, if you are having a concern that the health care of your employee is your top priority. Means your employees are basically the assets, and the assets must be taken care properly by the organization. So, if you are doing so, you are also trying to maintain the health of your employees. Uh, you have to introduce, basically you have, being an employer, you have to introduce certain health and wellness program to your employees, so that if they will get infected from some diseases, they can take benefit of those programs introduced by you as an employer. Uh, you have to give a proper space to your employees, so that all the day just move around and they just get free from the boredom and the monotony while working or while sitting on a particular place, and by doing so they just get more energy, or they just reduce the fatigue and monotony while working at a particular place or while working a particular task. So, it is also one of the measures to promote health, employee health. And whatever the measures, it is also one of the important measures thing, that whatever the program that you have introduced for the health aspect of your employees, that health, that welfare program or that measure must be communicated to your employees, so that they just know that what things they will have to do if they will get infected. And you just also encourage communication, means you just encourage your employees that what other things are required from them, that they just take care of their health, means what welfare or what safety measures the organization have to introduce more, that must be initiated, or that the ideas must be suggested or welcomed by the employees too. So, it is also one of the measure which somehow help in promoting the health employees, promoting the health of your employees. So, these are basically some references you just go through for getting more information about the topic. That is all. I hope you will like this video lecture. Thank you, students.